Welcome to the Good Success Podcast. We have an amazing show scheduled for you today, but before we get started, let's have a word from our sponsors. Radius Renovation Group is a full-service construction management solution for investors of single-family and small multifamily investors in 25 states. Whether you own one property or hundreds in different states, the goal is to be your one-stop shop for all your construction needs to increase property values and to give you a positive and profitable outcome. Using their 8-step process, Radius will walk the project, complete a line-by-line scope of work and estimate, schedule work with licensed and Radius certified contractors, manage the project and contractors, pay the contractors as work is completed, provide quality control throughout the project, and when the project is complete, do a final inspection. Clients are provided with login access to Radius's cloud-based project management platform to view work schedules and updated photos of each job. There is even the ability to directly message the project manager. Radius only works with real estate investors, so they speak your language and understand your needs, from project timing to investor-friendly pricing. If you're an investor who is done trying to manage contractors and rehabs on your own, it might be time to consider having Radius as your partner. To put their expertise to work for you today, visit the Radius website at www.radiusreno.com or call them right now at 417-730-9777. And now, back to the Good Success Podcast.
Focus on things you're not so good at. I think it's easy for all of us. We all have strengths, fortunately. And it's very easy to work on things that you're good at, that you're successful at.
Welcome back to the Good Success Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Culler, along with President of Good Success, Tom Olson.
What's up, everybody?
How has things been going? How have things been going?
I apologize to our listeners because we have been off the rail for a couple of weeks. We haven't been doing our consistent weekly podcast.
But you got some big things going in the works.
We've got a bunch of amazing things coming up. I actually completed my 30 Days to Good Success workbook, which will be on Amazon soon. So, what I found is that a lot of people wanted to come to me asking me for mentorship or like, how do I live life? How do I become successful? And what most people don't want to hear is that, well, it all starts with you. It all starts with you changing your mindset. It all starts with you being a better person. It all starts with getting to know you first. And what I found is that by trying to mentor people and asking them, what should I do? Why should I do it? Or how to do it? I couldn't even give them a good answer and feel good about myself and feel good that I was giving them real good advice unless I could answer these questions. And it was taking so long to answer these questions that I didn't feel right about having people pay for mentorship until they went through these. But I think this is a self-help course in itself. I think it could actually really help people realize where they're at today and help them put themselves on a path to figure out what their purpose is in life and then help them fulfill that purpose in which is really the whole goal of Good Success, is to really help people figure out what their purpose is in life, why were they created, and then help them reach their potential in that purpose. And I don't think you're ever going to do that unless you answer the right questions. And most of the time we don't have the right answers. Why? Not because we don't know the answers. Most of the time we know the answers, we just don't ask the right questions. So I've been working really hard on that. We also have the Net Profit Workbook, which is also going to be on Amazon too. So we've got a bunch of amazing, cool things coming up, and we've been working hard on them.
We did a podcast on the questions for Good Success.
We did, actually, yes.
So now you actually have a book to go with it.
You got it. So you can go back and watch the 2 episodes of the podcast that kind of explain it. Now, I did a little bit more in detail. I mean, this is a pretty thick 200-page workbook that I actually think that, maybe one day at a time might be too much for some people for some of these. I wrote this to actually literally do in 30 days, 1 question a day, and actually really dive deep into your own personal purpose, into your own personal, are you in debt? A lot of this is just practical stuff. What are you really good at? Helping you figure out what are your core geniuses and what are your experiences, but also facing the things in your life that you need to face, like the fears or the ways that you've been hurt, or maybe you've hurt somebody and you need to forgive yourself. You've done something wrong and you need to forgive yourself for that. And a lot of this goes back to everything we talk about in good success is not like having a bunch of money. It's not having the biggest business. That's not what good success is. Good success is the right person doing the right thing for the right reason with the right people for the right amount of time. And if that's the case, and if you're going to have good success, you got to know where to start and where you're at now. And that's really what this is. So I hope you guys will pay attention to that. The mastermind people ate this up. The last mastermind, I gave this away at the last mastermind, and they were just like very excited about it. So I hope you guys will be too.
When is that available?
I'm not sure. We're working on it. So this should be available on Amazon to purchase. So it is like I said, this is both of these. And Max wrote the net profit workbook because one of the problems we found in our masterminds, a lot of guys were making a lot of revenue, they were doing a lot of deals, but at the end of the day, or their business was growing, but they weren't making more net profit. So it just basically turned into kind of like, more revenue, more expenses. And like, that's what we do in our personal life too. We see that all the time with people that come to us and they're like, I'm making $600,000 a year, but I'm spending $650,000 a year. It doesn't matter, it doesn't. If you're spending more, it doesn't matter if you're making $50,000 or $650,000. If you're spending how much you're bringing in, then you're not creating wealth, and you're not being able to use that money to be able to make money on its own. So, the guest we have today is possibly a way for people to be able to invest and be able to invest in the different crowdfunding opportunities that they have, or I'm sure that they might have other ways that you can invest with them as well. But most people never get to that point because they don't do this first. Yeah. So, anyways, that's what we've been working on. I'm super excited about it. Next year's Community Go-Giver, Josh, I don't even think we've talked about this, but we're actually going to do a community barbecue. So we're going to invite the community to be part of it, and then the other thing that we're going to do at next year's Community Go-Giver. So everybody write these dates down: June 24, 25, and 26 of next year. I'm looking for two things. So first of all, I want community go-givers that want to come to the event, and it costs $500 to come. We're not going to discount it this year at all, but 100% of the ticket sales are going to go to charities or go to the community. So for me, I feel like people should be willing to pay for that, because knowing all that money is going to the actual cause of the Community Go-Giver. And then I'm looking for sponsors. So I'm looking for 3 lunch sponsors. It costs us about $1,500 a lunch to be able to provide lunch for everybody. So 3 of those sponsors, and then a gold, silver, and platinum sponsor as well, to be able to speak and have a booth at our event and all that stuff. But those sponsors are really going to pay for the event themselves, and then the actual ticket sales will all go back to people that will have other speakers at the Community Go-Giver that talk about what they're doing in the community and how they're using either real estate or their business or whatever their purpose is to help other people, and try to give that back to the community. So June 24, 25, and 26, communitygogiver.com. I believe everything's up and ready for that. It may not be quite yet, but it will be soon. And we're just going straight $500 a ticket and all. But just so you know, 100% of the money that comes from those ticket sales is going back to the community, and you will see it live at the Community Go-Giver, how we give that money back. So
that's exciting.
I know.
So, yeah, a lot of great
I'm
stuff that's coming in the
that.
works for good success. But you guys make sure that you're following us on all our social platforms so that you see everything that's going on. You guys can be up to date on all the events, all these books that are going to be coming out, some great stuff. So without further ado, we're going to introduce our guest on the show. So Mark Roderick. Mark, what is going on, man? Sorry we've been ranting the whole time, but welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Well, I listened to you guys with great interest there. I've at home, based on my experience at home, I think I was created to take the garbage out on Thursday evenings. That seems to be my most valuable contribution.
I think a lot of men were.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about Mark. Mark Roderick is one of the leading crowdfunding and fintech lawyers in the United States, expanding on his in-depth knowledge of capital raising and security laws. So I'm going to actually have Mark fully introduce himself in just a second, but we've already talked about a few of our good success stuff that's coming up in the works. But if you guys haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the Good Success Podcast on all the podcast platforms. Just hit subscribe and you will get all the notifications when podcasts come out. Like we mentioned, we got a few big things that are coming in the works for the podcast, so you guys make sure you stay up to date with that. And then you can also download the official Good Success app on either the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Just search Good Success. You'll find our nice big G logo on the app icon. You can download the app there. Far easier to listen to the podcast that way. So Tom, real quick, I know we already talked a little bit about the Community Go-Giver event. We talked about these 2 books. I mean, I want to look at these real quick while you're talking about the next thing. But we had a mastermind.
Yeah, and we have some big news about the mastermind.
Let's talk about it.
So the mastermind, we have decided to change it up a little bit. And what we were doing is 2 groups, because our mastermind got big enough where I feel like a small 20-something person mastermind is the best size to be able to really give people help. So we were going a whole week, me and our team were going a whole week. Monday, Tuesday was one group. Wednesday, everybody would get together on group 1, group 2, and then Thursday, Friday would be group 2. So this next event, we're going to do 2 things that are super special. The one thing that we're going to do is everybody's going to be together on Wednesday. And then Thursday and Friday, we're all going to come in the morning session and all kind of like get, I'll pump everybody up and I'll kind of give everybody a little speech and help everybody a little bit from what I see. But then we're going to split into 2 rooms and actually do the 2 rooms on the same site on the same days. And so we'll be together for lunch. We'll be all together for the dinner. So we got a lot of feedback from the members, and that's what we're going to do. In addition to that, the Wednesday, I am pumped about this, Josh. You should really come and be a part of this. So on Wednesday, we're gonna have a half a day of like the keynote speeches like that we normally do. You guys know that we always come, we hit it hard. This time we're actually gonna talk about your finances and how to properly tracking and how to have what numbers do you really need to know in your business. So this is like a big weakness in a lot of people's businesses. Is they might be making money, they may not, and they have no idea. So like that's gonna be a big focus on that Wednesday. But in the afternoon, right after lunch. So right after lunch, we're going to do Make Your Day Wednesday. We're creating 4 groups, and they're going to have 4 different leaders in those 4 groups, and we're going to go out in the community, and Good Success is going to give each group $1,000 to go out and make somebody's day or help somebody in the community. So we've already got 2 people. If you're a mastermind member listening to this and you want to be a part of that, please let me know. I am looking for 2 more leaders. If not, I'm going to start calling you. But if you want to be a part of that, that'll be on November 13th. So the dates for this time's mastermind is November 13th, 14th, and 15th. And we are going to do a boot camp or like a special day on that exact topic of that finances and knowing your numbers on that Tuesday beforehand. So for the new people, we're actually having them come to that. And then as part of the package to be able to come to that boot camp on knowing your finances and knowing your business, they'll get to come to the mastermind. So like I said, a lot of changes and a lot of cool things going on, and we're really excited about it. So we hope to see you in November. goodsuccess.com/mastermind. Fill out the application. Dan will give you a call and we'll see if you're a good fit.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of exciting stuff. Man, a lot of crazy stuff going on at Good Success. So again, just make sure that you're following us on all our social platforms to be up to date on everything that's going on. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this podcast episode. I'm excited to have Mark on the show. It's always interesting to have somebody on the show that we don't really know that much. I mean, we actually met Mark through one of those agencies that loops people in for podcast guests, and Mark's been on several other podcasts. I've had the opportunity to listen to some of the shows that he's been a part of, and just has just a whole slew of knowledge to share with you guys when it comes to investing and crowdfunding and fintech and all that good stuff. So excited to learn more about what Mark has to say and the value that he's going to bring on the show. So Mark, do us a favor for the people that don't know who you are. I know I read a little bit of an introduction for you, but introduce yourself. So who you are, what you do, how long you've been doing all that.
Well, okay, I will give you the 3-hour version, the short version.
Love it.
Now, so I'm a lawyer. I always introduce myself as a boring corporate lawyer, and I have represented through my career. I've always represented entrepreneurs, which sounds like kind of like you guys and your audience. And entrepreneurs do lots of different stuff, start businesses and sell businesses, and patent their ideas and all kinds of cool stuff. Let me tell you, it's a lot of fun representing entrepreneurs. Challenging, fast-paced, fun. So one of the things entrepreneurs do a lot of, as you undoubtedly know, is raise capital, because we live in a capitalist system, and we call it that for a reason, because capital is the lifeblood of almost every business. I'm sure there's some businesses where it's not, but most businesses it is. So entrepreneurs are always looking for capital. And in the legal world, when people raise capital, they are implicating this whole huge body of law called the securities laws. So I have always worked within the securities laws, helping small companies, entrepreneurs, not huge companies like Facebook, but small companies, entrepreneurs raise capital. And raising capital is tough. If you've ever raised capital, you know that it's tough. However, therefore, around 2012, 2011, when I saw this law on the horizon, this brand new law called the Jobs Act, the Jumpstart Our Businesses Act, I said, aha, this is going to change everything in my world of helping entrepreneurs raise capital, because that law, just by making a few changes, modifications of existing securities laws, it opened up a whole big universe to entrepreneurs as a way to raise capital. And in particular, for the first time ever, what that law did is it said, entrepreneurs, you can now use the internet to raise capital. Before then, you couldn't do that. Small companies could not advertise using the internet. They couldn't advertise on radio. So if you were starting a business, you couldn't tell anybody. Well, you could tell your friends, and you could tell your family, and you could tell people you already know, but you couldn't tell strangers. You couldn't use this powerful, super powerful thing called the internet to raise capital. And
can I
Jobs Act change that? Sure, go ahead. Can
I get some clarification on that, because I'm in this world daily, and I have obviously everybody in our mastermind is always raising capital. It's like an ongoing thing for us. So basically, when you say that, you basically mean unless it's outside of a fund environment where somebody creates a fund that actually can market to the masses, then they can't really market on Facebook. They can't really market on the internet for capital. And I see this a lot of times with investors in real estate, Josh. And it really scares me that actually somebody will put something out there and be asking for money. And I'm like, you guys got to be very careful about that. I need a deal funded. You really can't do that, So can I think for our audience, I think it'd be very helpful if you can. And I know I'm kind of taking you off the rails of where you were going.
Do anything you want. Whatever your audience wants to hear, that's what I want to talk.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to get back to where you're going, because I think it's very interesting, and I love your space. But if you can just let people know the ramifications and the penalties of doing that illegally, it's a big deal.
Well, yeah, sometimes when people ask me what the consequences of, violating the securities laws are, I ask them, well, how do you look in orange?
Right. But well, hey, that's a better answer than most attorneys.
Yeah.
Most attorneys, the response I give from most attorneys is, it depends. And I'm like,
well, you see.
Well, I'm not here to be accurate. I'm here to be interesting, No. So It does depend. And the reality really is this, that when you violate the securities laws, for the most part, people think, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, is going to come in, put me in handcuffs, walk me out. For entrepreneurs, that's probably not going to happen. Right? If you were Bernie Madoff on Wall Street and you're stealing billions of dollars, then it's going to happen. But in general, the SEC, like every government agency, only has so much resources, and they are not out there in general policing every securities transaction that happens. But the more important negative ramification, if you violate securities laws, is you're going to get sued by the people you raise money from. So the whole idea of raising money,
that's normally where the SEC even gets involved, is if something goes bad.
Yeah, if nothing ever goes bad, then there are never any implications of doing anything wrong. But of course, that's not the world. The world we go, the economy goes up and down. People do lose money, and the whole point of getting investors is to use their money in the deal rather than your money. It's called other people's money. But if you violate the law and your investors lose money, then they just like automatically have a right to sue you personally to get their money back. And now you've just eliminated the only benefit of using their money in the first place. So it is actually the private lawsuits more than the handcuffs and the SEC that matter more, but that it matters a lot. So
right,
you definitely.
So you
the good
so
news
you cannot
easy. Yeah, go
right.
ahead.
So to clarify, you cannot publicly advertise unless you have a fund that actually allows you to be able to work in that environment. So and that's where I feel like your crowdfunding comes in. So like
finish
contrast.
You started that question. Finish that question. You were going to say it is illegal to.
I'm sorry, I thought I did. So it's illegal to market publicly unless you are in a fund environment, like a hedge fund type environment, where you actually have, you've gone through the steps to be able to create whatever class that is, A, B, or C, like that can actually market to the masses.
I hope you've been enjoying this Good Success podcast, and we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Our next sponsor is Gary Harper at Sharper Business Solutions. Your business is a personal endeavor that you have poured your blood, sweat, and tears into. And they know that. Sharper Business Solutions is a full-service solution to help you scale your dream. Sharper Business Solution implements the Sharper process and other key systems, giving you the confidence that you need to have freedom and grow and scale your business. The Sharper team wants to come right alongside you and provide the resources needed for long-term growth and success. If you are looking to grow or scale your business, contact my friend and Good Success Mastermind member, Gary Harper, and his team to help you implement the Sharper process. You can schedule your free consultation today at sharperprocess.com. So go do it right now. Go to sharperprocess.com and schedule your free consultation with Gary and his team. Our next sponsor is Jerry Padilla from Prime Lending. Whether it's your first time buying a home or you're well adversed in the process, buying and refinancing a home can be an exciting and rewarding but sometimes challenging experience. At Prime Lending, we take the time to listen and work with you to find a home loan that fits your needs. If you're looking to refinance your loan, lower your interest rate, lower your monthly payments, shorten your term, or get cash for whatever reason you need, we have a solution for you. Prime Lending also has several options for renovation loans, so you can find what works best for you and your home project. Make sure you contact our good friend, Jerry Padilla, who is a senior loan officer and originator with Prime Lending and has over 11 years in the mortgage industry. You can learn more about Jerry and what Prime Lending has to offer you by visiting goodsuccess.com/prime lending. Again, that's goodsuccess.com/prime lending. And now, back to our show.
No, that's why I wanted you to finish the question.
Okay.
Because that is wrong.
Okay.
That was the world before the Jobs Act.
Right. That's where I was. Okay. So, yeah,
that
exactly.
was the world before the Jobs Act. But now, with the Jobs Act, that is no longer true.
That's where I was going. That's exactly where I was going. So because of the Jobs Act and because now it's created this crowdfunding, there is an opportunity to be able to do so, but there's still parameters in which people have to still obey in order to do it legally. So that's kind of where I was going.
Well, yes. As I always say, fortunately, there are all these very technical, complicated legal rules, because otherwise no one would have to hire me. But the concept that I want to convey to your listeners is that it's just the internet, and if you jump through some hoops, like let's say you guys have an idea for a business, that this conversation gives you an idea for a business, and you want to raise money for it. It's a general matter. You can create a website. In fact, you could be doing it now while we're talking about. But as soon as we're off,
I think we should start right now.
Yeah, you could, and you could open that website to the whole world, and that would be today, because of the Jobs Act, completely legal. You can advertise your new business, your real estate deal, or whatever the business is. to every investor in the world this afternoon. And that can be, if you jump through some hoops, that can be completely legal. That's why it's such a big deal. Didn't used to be able to do that. You know, you used to have to call people, your friends, your parents, your whatever, your lawyer, your accountant, which was a hassle to begin with. But it's more than a hassle because a lot of people in this country, you know, don't live in Silicon Valley or Manhattan, where they know a lot of people, a lot of investors. A lot of people in this country live in poor areas or don't have, a father in their home that they can ask for money, and the mother doesn't have money. So the sociological implications of the situation were very bad. It mattered a lot whom you knew, where you grew up. Today, theoretically, it doesn't. You can contact every investor in the world this afternoon.
I get spam text messages all the time from those.
I get so I'm on the other side. I get everybody and their mother that wants to give me money at 5%, no security, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so I appreciate you, definitely expounding on that. We're going to circle back around to the whole real estate.
Well, it's not just real estate that he's talking about raising money for. It's any business.
Well, no, I get that. I'm saying we want to go back to real estate because our audience is
figure out what. So he sparked my interest. So you're telling me that that's how it was prior to the Jobs Act, of what I explained. Unless you had a fund environment, you couldn't publicly market. Now, because there is a Jobs Act, what you're saying is that people can, as long as they do it the right way. Correct?
As long as they do it the right way, and it's not hard to do it the right way.
Are you going to tell us on this podcast what the right way is, or is it just I have to call you?
No, I'd be happy to tell you. So, and I'm not going to get in all to the details, just because
sure.
You guys would both be asleep if I did, and your whole audience.
Well, Josh probably would, but I probably wouldn't, because this is the kind of stuff that I eat.
Your audience is just going to be going, God, why did they let this guy on this show? So I'd hate to have that. But so just very briefly, there are three what I call flavors of crowdfunding. And they're referred to Title II, Title III, Title IV, just because of the section of the Jobs Act. And one of them is super simple, and I can explain every single rule about that in 30 seconds. That's called Title II crowdfunding, where you can do absolutely anything you want, advertise anything and anywhere you want, as long as you only take money from accredited investors.
Okay.
That's the one rule. So it took even less than 30 seconds. There's only one rule for Title II crowdfunding. Only accept checks from accredited folks. Okay?
Can you accept wires?
Wires? Anything.
Okay.
Cryptocurrency.
Oh, boy.
Anything.
Here we go.
So that's one kind, and that is by far the most successful kind of crowdfunding because it's so simple.
But then there's a process in which I'm assuming you need to go through with them to verify that they are accredited investor.
You do. You have to. Yeah. You generally do that by hiring a company, a third-party company called Verify Investor, and that's what the company does. They charge you $40 per investor or something. So super easy. I'll jump to Title IV. That is much, much more complicated. You can raise money from non-accredited investors. You can advertise, but you have to get approval from the SEC. And that's almost like going through a public offering. You have to hire someone like me to put together a big, thick book, an offering circular, and that approval process takes a long time. It's expensive, and you get it approved by the SEC. Now you can sell to non-accredited investors also. So didn't used to be able to do that either, but you can now do that. And that's generally if you're trying to raise more money for bigger projects. And then the third kind, which we call Title III, is a very peculiar animal. You don't need the SEC's approval. You can still sell to non-accredited investors, but there's all kinds of limits limits on how much you can raise, limits on how much each person can invest, limits on how the deals get advertised, limits on where they get advertised, a very structured process of how offerings need to be made, all online. So it's an unusual and so far not very successful, somewhat successful, but not very successful flavor of crowdfunding. So I didn't tell you all the rules because that would take forever and you would go to sleep. But I did tell you all the rules for Title II crowdfunding, which is by far the most successful.
Gotcha. Awesome.
That's interesting. So how does that relate to platforms like you talked about, the internet is like the big opportunity for crowdfunding. I mean, you got websites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo where, somebody, and I do where I donate the money, do crowdfunding on a Kickstarter campaign. I do that pretty often where the company will send me their product or whatever. How does that relate to kind of those three flavors? I mean, which flavor does that kind of fall into?
Yeah, it's not one of the flavors. So I could have said and should have that there are two kinds of crowdfunding. There's the Kickstarter Indiegogo type. We call that donation-based crowdfunding because that's what it is. You're just giving people money. Maybe you'll get the product if it's ever developed. It's not an investment. Okay.
Got it.
And because it's not an investment, it doesn't implicate any securities laws. Right. So that just has nothing.
So it's easier to work with.
Yeah, it is. Now, it's presumably easier to get people to give you money if you're giving them something in return, like a stock certificate or something. But Kickstarter has been super successful, much more successful than experts like me ever predicted, because we said, hey, it's hard enough to raise money when you're giving people something in return. No one's going to give you money for a freaking baseball cap. But they have, billions of dollars, I think.
Yeah. Interesting.
So Kickstarter, just to clarify, that's not like you can actually, there are crowdfunding platforms in which like people actually can post deals or post an opportunity to be able to invest. But what you're talking about is more working with the individual that wants to raise money and helping them create their own little platform or their own little way to be able to legally raise capital.
Well, the distinction I'm making is between Kickstarter and Indiegogo, which is donation-based crowdfunding.
Right, that's donation, but there are crowdfunding, platforms out there,
or equity crowdfunding.
Right,
and that's within equity crowdfunding, there are those three flavors that I talked about. And equity crowdfunding, some kinds of equity crowdfunding have to be done on a licensed portal. And other kinds of crowdfunding, you can either do through an organized portal or you can have your own. And in particular, Title II, you can create a website for your own Title II business and just use that. You don't have to use anybody else's internet website. Let's call it that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and honestly, I wasn't even aware of that. So I'm glad we had you on, Mark.
Yeah, that's a good conversation. So real quick, a big portion of the audience that listens to this podcast are real estate investors. They're in real estate in some way, shape, or form. So when we're talking about crowdfunding, I know a lot of times, especially people in our networks and a part of groups that we're a part of, they get funding from investors that they meet face to face. They're belly to belly with these people and they say, hey, I've got a deal. The deal makes sense. Here's the pro forma. Can I get, lending on this, private lending or whatever? And I know Tom even does a lot of lending himself. So is that really considered crowdfunding, or at some point, I guess the question I'm going into is, for real estate investors, is there any point where they should be looking at a crowdfunding platform like you're talking about, and what would that case be?
Yeah, I mean, every real estate investor should absolutely be looking at crowdfunding platforms. So earlier, I talked about the difficulty in raising money in the old world from the entrepreneur's point of view, because, you only know so many people. Well, exactly the same difficulty applied from the investor's point of view. You only know so many deals. You only know,
Right.
you happen to know two or three guys who are doing real estate deals. So your universe of choices is limited. But just as the entrepreneur using the internet can potentially reach every investor in the world, the investor using the internet can potentially reach every deal in the world. So, from an investor's point of view, you definitely should be looking at good real estate investing sites. And I can give you a couple names if you'd like me to.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I will give you sort of the top two real estate crowdfunding sites. One is called Realcrowd, one word, and the other is called Crowdstreet, one word. And if your listeners haven't done so yet, they should go look at those sites, sign up, and just look around. It's like sort of like walking into if these people are real estate investors, signing up at those sites will be like someone who really loves shoes walking into DSW for the first time. You just start walking down the road and say, wow, they got a lot of shoes. And these sites, your folks, your listeners will say, wow, these people have great deals. And we get to pick and choose. And then from those sites, you can find other sites. But absolutely. I mean, it is a whole new universe for real estate investors. They pick your sector, multifamily or industrial or warehouse or all these different sectors. They're all represented on these sites with terrific real estate sponsors. So definitely.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, and for at Good Success, that's a lot of my audience, but a lot of the direction that we're going to is in just strictly business, trying to really just try to help purpose-driven entrepreneurs with their business. So you named some of the places for real estate. So what about some of the best crowdfunding websites for just general business?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I will answer it. So as the crowdfunding market has developed, a good 90 or 95% of it is real estate.
Well, that's because it costs more. I mean, it's very capital intensive. It's a lot more capital intensive than creating a widget shop.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think from the investor's point of view, it just turns out that if you're going to invest in something online, I think people feel more comfortable investing in an apartment building.
Yeah, and having an asset to back it.
They can see it. There's nowhere near the volume outside real estate. I will give you, here's a site. There's one called Seedinvest, and that is more like a kind of online venture capital, sort of cutting edge, high tech, Silicon Valley kind of investments. I would say, there's no site where you just see a wide range of different industries represented. And that's just because crowdfunding is new and has not yet penetrated kind of the general capital marketplace. It has penetrated real estate and sort of venture capital kinds of businesses to a lesser extent, but has yet to penetrate. It will penetrate the sort of broader capital markets.
So, and I'm sure that you're not really here to promote those other crowdfunding sites, but I guess maybe get into more of so you also talk about fintech and a lot of the stuff that you do. Can you just explain that for the audience? I think fintech's a little bit of a newer word and just a little different of a concept. So can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we basically use fintech to sound cool, to tell you the truth.
It sounds cool.
It does, right? It sounds cool. So you say, I do fintech. People say, oh, well, he's cool. But I mean, it stands for financial technology. And so any kind of technology around the financial sector, it falls within fintech. Crowdfunding falls within fintech because it's using technology to raise capital, which is, anything having to do with the banking industry. So, payment systems are fintech. Cryptocurrency and blockchain are probably by far the best known fintech toys. But any kind of technology in the financial sector can be fintech.
So how far does that go? Does that just go from your actual online banking, that your online banking portals can do all of your payments for you? I mean, is that basically all considered fintech?
That is fintech,
or even like,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, or applying for a mortgage online and rocketmortgage.com or whatever,
Yes.
these, that's pretty much all the same thing as fintech. So I think some people think that fintech is an investment where you're trying to invest, and get a return. I know a lot of the what I would call the sharks out there that are really trying to get 20, 30, 40% on like really short-term business loans to people. They talk about fintech quite a bit, but it really is just a technology to be able to handle financial transactions securely.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it is generally used to refer to disruptive technologies. Technologies that will take business away from traditional providers, whether it's taking, an online business loan company taking business from banks, or even, the so-called robo-advisors, which are really have gained a lot of traction, particularly among the millennial demographic. I mean, that's using technology. They use algorithms to make investments automatically, and that takes business from traditional, investment banking companies. So that is all fintech. Anything that disrupts the existing financial sector, I think you would be safe in calling fintech.
So I know you're an attorney, and I know that you have client privilege and all that kind of stuff. But is there any kind of a story or any kind of a person that you've helped that obviously you may not disclose a name or individuals, but can you give us an example of how you've maybe helped somebody, and I think that might help the audience kind of understand how they might be able to work for you, or what kind of benefit you can give them, or what kind of loss of pain that you could help them with?
Well, I'll tell you, I hope I've helped a lot of people by providing information. And so my blog, I provide a ton of information on my crowdfunding blog. It's all really valuable. There's no marketing stuff on my blog. And that is used in the crowdfunding industry as a free legal resource. And I know, because I get people thank me for it a lot, that I provide all of this help. I think a lot of people just use my blog rather than hiring me, which is a mistake, I think. But anyway, and I spend a lot of time on the phone with people. I kind of act as an educational resource for the crowdfunding industry because I'm very evangelical about it. So I can't tell you how many people I have spoken with about crowdfunding from every kind of background, inner city people trying to, fund inner city businesses with crowdfunding. And I talk to people all the time. And then, of course, my clients, I have a number of clients who exist to do good in the world. And I will mention one, and on my other clients, if they hear your show, will say, why did you mention me? But there's a portal called Small Change, and it is based in Pittsburgh. And it is run by a woman named Eve Picker, who is a former real estate developer. And the whole purpose of this portal is to finance real estate projects that benefit cities. So she has this index, this change index, and it has to do with things, it wouldn't be shocking to you: environmental impact, proximity to public transportation, all these worthwhile facets. And so she rates these projects on her change index. And that's what the portal does. It raises money for, good housing, good office space, and she's helping communities. And so that makes me feel good.
I love that. That's awesome.
But basically the way you've helped her is you've helped her build this portal to be able to help do this. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a great story. I appreciate that. And actually, I might even reach out to her myself because I have this crazy vision to flip the city of Gary, Indiana, which definitely needs help.
Well, so that's exactly the kind of thing.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Call her for sure.
Exactly. So I'm like circling this. I'm starring this, saying, that's awesome. So I appreciate you've given us that. So you mentioned your blog. Can you just give us the address of that blog, or how do people find you on that for that blog?
Yeah, and one thing you can do is just say Mark Roderick crowdfunding in Google, and you'll find it because I'm all over the place on it. But the actual address is crowdfundattny.com. So the abbreviation for attorney, crowdfundattny.com. And there I will be.
There you will be. And then we're going to actually give you the opportunity to leave some more contact info at the end of the show here. But definitely good for Tom to bring that up right now because that's what you've been talking about. So, and we'll have you repeat that when we close out the show here in just a few minutes. So it's getting down to time, so we got to move along. I mean, we could definitely talk a lot more about this kind of stuff. I know Tom's head's spinning right now, and so maybe you guys will just have a phone conversation.
I don't know.
Or we'll have to have him back on the show.
Yeah, maybe.
So anyway, so we're going to wind this down. We're going to bring it down to the final two questions that we ask every single person on the show here. And thus far, thank you, Mark, for sharing everything that you have. A lot of great information that really taps into a different field than most people that are listening to the podcast have listened to or have educated themselves on. So appreciate you sharing everything.
Every business needs money.
Every business
needs money.
Absolutely.
You got it.
Absolutely. So this has been very, very good to have on the show here. So one of the questions that we ask every single person that we get on the show here is, what does good success mean to you? So you don't know us very well. We've emailed back and forth a couple times. First time we've had you on the show here, but good success to us means a lot. It has a lot more of a deeper meaning than just, what most people portray as success. But when maybe it's the first time that you heard about us and you jumped on the show here, when you hear that term good success, what does that mean to you?
Well, in my particular, in my business life, I will tell you, good success means sort of spreading the gospel of crowdfunding and democratizing capital and taking some of the financial power out of the hands of Manhattan and the very wealthy private equity funds and putting it back where it belongs, which is in the hands of ordinary Americans and American entrepreneurs. I just feel so strongly about that. And that's what this is all about for me. So the more I can talk to people, folks like you, and I mean, I can't tell you, I see exactly what I see very often. I can see your brain spinning. You're saying, wait a second, if I can do that, then that means, and that is terrific. That's my payoff.
Well, I mean, it's more than just like Gary, Indiana. So I have this crazy thing with Gary. I have, when it comes to raising capital, I don't have a problem. I have 150 people that are on a list of mine that like literally call me almost every week asking me for them to give me money. So I don't have a problem with the raising capital, but like for certain projects and stuff, like it's a lot larger than just like $100,000. It would definitely be, a lot easier to have at least some other avenues. And then this morning at breakfast, I was talking to a girl who actually really just wants to help, children that are in the system of like orphanages or and she's wanting to create either her own orphanage or really trying to help. And I was like, well, let's do it. Let's figure out how to do this in Gary, Indiana. And then now I'm just like, trying to put all these pieces together. And it's amazing sometimes how God puts people in your life at the right times to be able to make the right connections as long as you're looking for it and willing to be taught. So that's where my mind's going right now.
Terrific.
How do we help more people?
Yes, and putting all that power back in the hands of ordinary people. It just has it has a multiplying effect because people are really creative. If you give them the power to create for themselves, it's a very powerful thing. So success for me is helping that process become bigger and bigger and improve the lives of more and more people.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing that. So then the last thing that we have here is you got to leave the audience with one thing only. So whether it's a book you've read you want to share, maybe it's a quote, a thought, piece of advice, or whatever it is. If you left the audience with one thing, what would that be?
A piece of advice? Well,
this is your chance.
Yeah. I guess the business advice is to focus on things you're not so good at. I think it's easy for all of us. We all have strengths, fortunately. And it's very easy to work on things that you're good at, that you're successful at. A particular thing. For example, someone who's really good at selling. You often see people who are really good at selling focus only on selling and not on any other aspect of their sort of business acumen. And there's a limit, that you reach a limit if you only focus on what you're good at. I have found personally that focusing on what you're not good at and working on it, it's hard. It's not very satisfying because you're not good at it. But I have found personally that working on things that you're weak at there is a long-term payoff. That's advice that I try to give.
So what you're not saying, you're not saying like don't try to figure out what your core genius is and really like blossom in that. But what you are saying is realize what you're not good at, realize where you're at in other areas of your life. And Zig Ziglar kind of has this wheel, and he has like these 10 things in your life, and like you should be constantly trying to improve on those things. And if you have like one that's a 1 and like 4 that are a 10, you're going to end up having a flat tire. So like you've got to figure out how to improve on these so there is some kind of balance and some kind of betterment.
Yeah. Now, you have to understand your strengths, what you're good at, because everyone is good at different things. And if you keep trying to be good at what other people are good at, you're going to ignore what you're good at. So absolutely, you have to know what you're good at. You just can't focus only on what you're good at.
Right.
Try to improve. There's the weakest link in the chain concept, So focus on what you're good at for sure, but don't leave the other stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good advice.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Appreciate it. And thank you for being on the show today, Mark. We absolutely appreciate everything that you shared. If somebody wanted to contact you, I know you mentioned your blog, the website for that earlier, but if you can re-say that and let people know what that website is again.
Yeah, my blog is definitely the way to get a hold of me. All my contact information is there. It's Crowdfund, attny.com. And send me an email. You can always call me, but chances are I'll already be on the phone. So send me an email. I promise I'll get back to you, and we'll talk about crowdfunding.
Absolutely. Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you so much for being on the show. And Mark's also been on several other podcasts before, so make sure you guys go check those out as well. Like he said, if you just Google Mark Roderick crowdfunding, more than likely something's going to show up on Google, right? So all of his stuff, everything that he's been a part of. But Mark, thank you so much for being on the show today. We appreciate you. And we look forward to having you back again soon.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is going to do it for today's episode of the Good Success Podcast. We appreciate you jumping on and joining us today. Remember, if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you have subscribed to the Good Success Podcast. Those of you who are listening to the podcast brand new, maybe it's from you're from Mark's audience when he shared this or whatever, make sure you subscribe. Also, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review if you listen on Apple Podcasts, or just download the Good Success app from either the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. And then, Tom, do you want to talk about some, Good Success Mastermind, the Community Go-Giver event? I know you already mentioned that.
Yeah, we already talked about the mastermind. So, like, if you think that you're at that level where you want to be in the room with the fewer betters and the people that are really trying to help the better people even get better, and I would check out the Good Success Mastermind if I were you. We are also talking about a small local. It's not really a mastermind, but although we'll have a little bit of a component to it, a community go-giver group on Saturdays, the last Saturday of every single month. We're going to probably start that in September, October. So for your local people, look out for that. I think that's going to be a really cool thing to be a part of. And that's about it.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for today's episode of the Good Success Podcast. We appreciate you jumping on and joining us today. Remember to be a conduit, not a bucket.
Work to have to give.
And we'll catch you on the next one.